What's going on, everybody? I'm Primalliquid, and welcome to a little bit different video compared to what I normally do. Because, you see, in the last 12 months, I've been asked one question specifically that has just come up so often that I'm going to make it into its own little video, and I'm going to give you 5 answers instead of just the one. So, what is the question? Well, in the last, year and a half, I've obviously done a huge amount of Final Fantasy mods, across all the different Final Fantasies, different sorts of mods. We've done difficulty mods, we've done hardcore mods, we've done randomizers, and all things like that. Now, the good thing about mods is they bring new life into a game. Obviously, we've all played Final Fantasy, we've all played it 1,000,001 times, depending on the title, and so it does get a little stale after a while. And so what mods do is, even though you're not re-experiencing the story, it gives a new, fresh gameplay element. Well, depending on the mod, it does. But that new, fresh element really reinvigorates the game and gives you a whole new way to enjoy it. And that's why, if you love Final Fantasy, if you constantly play it, try out some of these mods. Okay, because they will make you fall in love with the game all over again. Okay, so the question was, what is my favorite mod and why do I like it so much? Well, instead of just giving you one answer, I'm going to give you 5. So I'm going to be giving you my top 5 favorite Final Fantasy mods, and then we're also going to talk about why. So, coming in at number 5, we have, unexpectedly, Pbird. Now, Pbird itself is a good mod for Final Fantasy X until a certain point. You see, it has a lot of changes. There are gameplay changes, monster changes, ability changes, and all that. It's a complete rework. And Pbird has spent a very long time making this mod. However, it does fall short on a few places. Namely, Pbird actually recommends this mod as a non-grinding mod. The only downside is, in order to actually complete the game, you have to beat Yu Yevon. However, in Pbird, in order to beat Yu Yevon, you first have to beat Penance. Now, if you've ever done that in the base game, you know yourself, you're going to need pretty much max stats. Because in order to fight Penance, you have to get through the Dark Aeons first. Pbird, however, takes that one step too far. Because you see, in order to beat Yu Yevon, you have to beat Penance. In order to beat Penance, you have to do the Dark Aeons. And in order to even stand a remote chance against the Dark Aeons, you need the Celestial weapons, which in the OG wouldn't be that bad. In Pbird, however, you have to 100% complete the Monster Arena first. And some of the changes to the Monster Arena is where things really fall off the deep end. The overall story section of the game is actually done quite well and balanced very nicely. Now, there are a couple of sections, mainly being Mihen Road and then Calmlands and Gagazet onwards, which I think could maybe use a little bit more tweaking just to make the curve, a little more fair for non-grinders. But other than that, the actual balancing, the monster changes, the equipment changes, the skill changes, all that worked well and it was smooth. Okay, it really was quite smooth and an enjoyable experience. However, once you actually beat Broska's Final Aeon and you move towards the Monster Arena, that's where things take a nosedive. The Monster Arena is infuriating, it is annoying, it is a 200 to 300 hour grind fest, and it is basically just designed to make you waste time, which I completely disagree with. And I know that's ironic coming from me, given that I am, a grinder at heart. I always grind. I think Pbird just takes it to a whole new level, and it's really annoying, if I'm honest. Especially because, one of the big selling points for the mod is it creates new ways to play the game. All these old abilities that were just never used, now they have a use. That was one of the selling points of the mod. When you come to the Monster Arena, though, most of the fights can only be done one way. There's one way and one way only to do these fights. And yeah, depending on the way that is done, it could work. But not in Pbird, unfortunately. Like, one of the fights that I remember off the top of my head, we have to zombie a mob and then inflict regen on it. We have to poison a mob. And I think we had to doom a mob, like, all in the same fight. That was the only way to kill these 3 mobs. And essentially, it got down to you inflicted the status ailment, and then you just sat there for 70 turns. You literally just sat there for 70 turns waiting for the mobs to die because you couldn't damage them in any other way. That's not fun, that's not engaging, that's tedious and boring. That's bad design in my opinion. So that's why Pbird comes in at number 5. What I would suggest doing is if you want to play the mod, play it like quite a few of us did and just consider beating Broska's final Aeon as completing the mod. If you want to do all the optional stuff, go ahead, but to me and plenty of others, Broska's final Aeon, end of the game, basically. It's like, ignore you, Yevon, and Penance and all that. Okay, moving on to number 4, which I think is going to surprise a lot of people because it is the Final Fantasy 13 Randomizer. Now, I'm not a big fan of the 13 series. Granted, the original 13 is my favorite of the 3 games in the series, but why is this specifically in my top 5 mod list? It's actually because of the changes that the randomizer brings to the game. Literally everything changes in this randomizer. You can change the running speed, the OST, the fights, the Crystarium costs, the gear, the abilities, all the stores, when you unlock the stores, just like everything. Like, you can even change the attacks and the attack animations. It is freaking insane. Like, about the only thing that you can't do in this randomizer is change, like, the look of characters. That's like the only thing that cannot change in this randomizer. It is freaking hilarious, okay? This is a mod that I actually did on stream. I did upload the VODs to YouTube, but this was just a right laugh. Like, from start to finish, it was just a hilarious laugh. Now, the post-game did get a little you know, while doing all the Seath Stone missions, but I don't think that's the randomizer's fault. I think that's just a boring post-game on 13 in general. But going up through the actual story, you know, beating Orphan at the end and that was really, really fun. And there were some unexpected challenges, which really brought to life the challenge, really made me think for a minute about how I was going to get through certain things because I didn't have abilities that the game thinks I would have at that point, you know? So that's why Final Fantasy 13 Randomizer is my number 4 pick. And honestly, even if you are not a fan of 13, give it a try, okay? We had people watching the streams, taking part in chat, who literally hate FF13, and even they said that the mod, well, the randomizer, was good fun. So that's why I would definitely recommend checking it out if you can. Now, let's move on to number 3. We are getting into the top 3 now. Ooh, right. So, for number 3, we have quite a simple mod, actually. This is probably a nice beginner mod for a lot of people, I think. And that is Final Fantasy X Sin Unleashed. Now, Sin Unleashed is designed as more of a difficulty mod. Like, it isn't hardcore, but it is an increase in difficulty, which does make you think a little bit more than when you are playing the base FF10, basically. Now, monsters don't change, gear doesn't change, sphere grid doesn't change. All that changes in Sin Unleashed is enemy stats, okay? Now, there are 2 difficulties in Sin Unleashed. I can't remember the stat increase for the lower difficulty, but for the higher difficulty, it's just a straight 60% stat increase across the board for enemies, which it might sound like a lot, but early on, you know, 60% added on to 10, it's not that much when you think about it. Whereas later on, you know, Monster Arena, 60% on top of 100, it gives a nice boost. So the early game, you know, it's not too bad. Later on, though, things do start to ramp up and ramp up and ramp up, which I think is really nice because it still keeps the initial balance and the initial curves of the base game, but then also does make things a little bit more challenging without going too far overboard. And of course, it doesn't really change too many things, so you still have your base knowledge of the game. And that's why I think for Sin Unleashed, if you've never played, you know, a mod before, if you've never played a Final Fantasy mod or a difficulty mod or anything like that, Sin Unleashed is probably the absolute best starting point for a mod, because it's only a slight difficulty increase, and it really gets you in there to see what mods can do and how the game can change just with a few different values. So if you've never played a mod, give Sin Unleashed a try. Definitely a nice 10 out of 10 mod, and it's actually what got me into modded Final Fantasy games as well. That's how I started. Sin Unleashed was my first Final Fantasy mod. Okay, let's move on to number 2, shall we? Now, number 2 is... it's near and dear to my heart because it was really fun. Now, it does share some similarities with the 13 Randomizer, but for number 2, we are going with the Final Fantasy VIII Randomizer, okay? Now, Final Fantasy VIII Randomizer is a nice, interesting one because it changes a lot of things. So you can change mobs, bosses, you can change draw abilities, like what monsters have what draw abilities. You can draw Sophie's, Selphie's slot abilities, for example, and you could junction them if you wanted to, or you could just cast the end every fight. Kind of broken, but you know. You can change drops, draw points, you can change like what abilities GFs have, you can change what card mod turns cards into. It's like, it's one of them things that just changes so much, and because of the way the junction system works, you can actually start the game really underpowered, and then you can also, you know, go into Ifrit's cave to fight Ifrit, but boom, you've changed the bosses, and now your Ifrit is now Omega, which is just hilarious when it happens. It's like, I remember the first playthrough I did of the 8 Randomizer, we got to Dalit, and the boss I had at Dalit was Ultima Weapon. And it's like, I could have grinded to beat Ultima Weapon at that point, but the problem then is I'd have been like mega OP for the rest of the game, so I didn't. I just made a new seed. But FF8 Randomizer is much the same as 13. It is a laugh start to finish, and in fact there's plenty of people in the community, you know, who are like constantly talking in Discord and all that about the 8 Randomizer. They've done 10-20 playthroughs, all different seeds on the Randomizer. It's the one Randomizer I've played so far that just keeps on giving, you know, like when you do a playthrough, create a new seed, boom, entirely different playthrough. Everything is different, so it really does allow you to play the game again without playing the game again, if that makes sense. Like, it lets you play the game, but it's basically an entirely new experience every time, and it is incredibly fun, which is the most important part of these randomizers. Now, obviously, yes, you can get unlucky, you know, you could get like a super OP boss early on, in which case, you know, you might get the end or something like that, and to cheese your way through, you might have ways to grind your way through, or, you know, you might get some holy war items, for example, that makes you invincible to get through it, or maybe you just get screwed. That's the joy of a randomizer, you know? So, with that said, let's move on to our number 1, shall we? The top Final Fantasy mod that I 100% think everybody should try. Okay, I don't care if you like the base game or not, try this mod. And the reason I say that is because for me, the base game doesn't even rank in my top 5 FF games, okay? But this mod is number 1. I think that explains everything. But I am, of course, talking about Final Fantasy VII New Threat. This mod is freaking amazing, okay? Now, I'm okay with FF7, you know, I like FF7. It's not my most enjoyable game, though. Like, the gameplay, It's like, I like the materia system, but that's just because I like grinding. The story, again, you know. But New Threat is freaking amazing, okay? Like, it literally got to the point that when we finished New Threat, I literally just straight up said in a video, look, here is the creator of New Threat's Patreon. Go and follow him, like, go and support him so he can actually make, you know, like, he's working on an FF8 New Threat, he wants to do a 9 New Threat, support him so we get these new mods, because the changes to FF7 New Threat are freaking insane, okay? It is above and beyond the one mod I've had the most fun in. You have 2 different difficulty settings in the mod, so you can choose whether you want a normal mode or a hard mode. There are new routes, so you can either go through the normal routes, or you can go through a new custom-made route. Now, I did the custom-made route. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, I hate when you sneeze on video. But yeah, so there's a new custom route, which is the one I went with, where, you know, the story flags are messed up, so you have to go through a different way. There's new bosses, new custom bosses, new weapons, new materia, new attacks. The way you get limit breaks is different. Ultimate weapons are different. There are new secret bosses, you know, there are actual new endgame bosses. He freaking put Ozma in the game. Ozma from FF9 is in FF7. Like, that's, it's incredible. It is insane the level of changes that New Threat has brought to a game. Like, honestly, at this point, right, I wouldn't even say New Threat is a mod. Okay, at this point, I am genuinely gonna say that New Threat is its own game. Okay, it boggles belief. Like, I can't even get the words to explain how good New Threat is. It's one of those things that you can sit there and play and play and play and play. Now, you won't be able to do everything in one playthrough if you don't look up some of the new secret additions, simply due to the fact the way you find out about them are located towards the end of the game, and you do actually need to, you know, find out about them. But then by the time you find out about them, you can't go back to the one-time only areas, so you know, you'd have to start a new playthrough in that. Or, you know, you could do what I did and just save mod your location, so you can actually, like, just go back to the locked areas, save, and then go back to where you were and that. But no, just like, oh, dude, just the way the mod plays, it is freaking insane. And honestly, like, the only gripe I have about this mod is just very, very simply and very straightforwardly, like, just change the locations of the one-time only requirements so that you can go back and get them when you actually find out about them. That's my biggest gripe. Like, I know it adds replayability because it makes you play again, but it also means that some people might be, you know, defeated and heartbroken because they don't want to do an entire new game just for, you know, one thing, if that makes sense. I understand missables are a thing in older JRPGs, but I don't really agree with this particular missable. However, the boss it unlocks is actually really, really fun. Like, I did really enjoy the boss it unlocks. And of course, it removes all the old cheesies, so you can't really super cheese like you could before with infinite Knights of the Round, infinite counter attacks or anything like that, you know. Like, mime cheese is still a thing, but it's nowhere near as potent as it is in the OG, and that's why I think New Threat deserves the #1 spot. Okay, like, it's been completely rebalanced, it's been completely changed. The amount of effort and detail that has gone into it, like, it's not even 10 out of 10, it's 15 out of 10. That's all I can say. Like, I don't like FF7 all that much, but still, that is, like, props, you know, big. It deserves its props, for sure. It is freaking insane, and if anybody can try any of the mods that I've talked about in this list, I would 110% strongly suggest it being New Threat. If you can only choose one, do New Threat. Okay, because it is freaking insane. But though, everybody, that is my top 5 Final Fantasy mods list. Let me know what you think down below. Like, did you watch all 5 of these playthroughs? Have you played any of these mods yourself? And if so, what would be your ranking? I'm really curious right now, and I'd love to talk about it down below in the comment section. But as always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up button, and of course, I already mentioned, leave a comment down below. Check the description while you're down there for links to all my lovely socials, like my lovely Twitch channel where I stream free or even more days a week, doing quite a few different things. October is going to be a horror month, which is going to be horrible because I am a chicken. I'm a very big chicken when it comes to horror, so October being a horror month, yay! And then of course lots of Final Fantasy in September as well. But though, everybody, until next time, I will see you later. Goodbye all.